Okay, so let's dive into what was, no joke, one of the biggest intellectual showdowns of the last 1,000 years. We're talking about a battle of ideas between two absolute giants of the Reformation, Martin Luther and Desiderius Erasmus. And this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. Nope. This is the story of a single, powerful question that literally split Western Christianity right down the middle. To really get this fight, you've got to understand the fighters. And this quote from Martin Luther, man, it tells you everything you need to know about the guy. He wasn't playing games. He wasn't a diplomat. He saw himself as this force of nature, sent to just tear down a corrupt system all the way to its foundations. For Luther, there was no such thing as a half measure. And then you've got his opponent, who, well, he couldn't have been more different. You have the radical monk versus the moderate scholar. Erasmus of Rotterdam was the most famous intellectual of his time, a super cautious, careful humanist who wanted to reform the church from the inside. Luther? He was the fiery, take-no-prisoners revolutionary. Honestly, their personalities were on a collision course from day one. But here's the crazy part of the story. They didn't start out as enemies. Not at all. For a little while, they were actually seen as allies, two of the most powerful voices out there calling for a change in a really troubled Catholic Church. And at first, the respect between them was huge. Luther was a massive fan of Erasmus's work on the Greek New Testament, which was a game changer because it let people read the scripture for themselves, without layers of tradition. And Erasmus, he saw the fire in Luther, even saying God had sent him to reform mankind. Get this. He once said he learned more from one page of Luther than from all of Thomas Aquinas. For a minute there, it really looked like they were fighting the same battle. But as Luther's movement started to morph from just a call for reform into a full-blown rebellion, those deep differences in how they saw the world, well, they became impossible to ignore. Two paths started to split, and they were splitting hard and fast. Luther's break with the church wasn't slow, it was explosive. In 1519, he's openly questioning the Pope's authority. By June 1520, the Pope condemns him. And what does Luther do? In December, he takes the papal bull. That's an official order from the Pope and burns it in the town square for everyone to see. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was war. He was all in. Meanwhile, Erasmus is over here trying to walk this impossible tightrope. His whole identity was wrapped up in being the great moderate, the guy respected by both popes and princes. But as Luther's crew got more and more radical, just being associated with them was becoming a problem for his reputation. And he's getting pressured, serious pressure from kings and popes to publicly attack Luther. His main goal pretty quickly became just putting distance between them, proving to the world he was not one of those guys. And, well, that pressure finally worked. Erasmus picked his moment, and he picked his topic very carefully. He wasn't going to argue about indulgences or corruption, no. He decided to strike right at the theological heart of everything Luther believed, the question of human free will. He even wrote to the King of England, basically saying, okay, I did it. I published my book on free will, this is a big deal, and I fully expect to get pelted with rocks for it. He knew his book was throwing down the gauntlet, and he knew Luther was absolutely going to pick it up. So what was Erasmus actually arguing? Well, he defined free will as this power a person has to either turn towards the things that lead to salvation or to turn away from them. He said, yeah, after the fall of man, our will got wounded by sin. It got weakened, but it wasn't destroyed. It still had this tiny but super important ability to choose to work with God's grace. And this slide, right here, this is the whole debate in a nutshell. On one side, you have Erasmus saying our will is damaged, but it can still cooperate. On the other side, you've got Luther who says, no, our will is completely bound by sin. It's totally powerless to choose God. For him, salvation isn't a team effort. It's 100% the work of God. And look at that bottom row, because this is key. Luther wasn't saying we're forced to sin. He was saying our understanding is so messed up, so darkened, that we are literally incapable of choosing God on our own. And that was the core idea of Luther's epic response, the bondage of the will. He argued the problem isn't that humanity is a puppet on a string. The problem is that it's blind. Sure, the will makes choices, but it's doing so in complete spiritual darkness. It can't even see the path to salvation, let alone choose to walk it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds kind of abstract, right? A philosophical argument for theologians. But for Luther, this wasn't just some academic debate. This was everything. This was the absolute heart of the entire Reformation. Because if Erasmus was right, even a tiny bit, then in Luther's mind, the whole gospel just falls apart. Everything he had fought for, everything he had risked his life for, it would all be for nothing. The stakes for him could not have been any higher.
And here's why. Just follow his logic. Step 1. His core belief is that salvation is a totally free gift from God, and you receive it by faith alone. Simple enough. Step 2. But if our free will can chip in anything, even just 1%, then step 3. It's not really a gift anymore, is it? It's something we helped earn. Step 4. And if we earned it, then some of the glory for our salvation belongs to us, not just God. And that leads right to step 5. It basically justifies the whole corrupt system of selling indulgences and trying to earn your way to heaven that he was trying to burn to the ground. See? For Luther, there was just no middle ground here.
So when Erasmus published his book and Luther dropped his devastating response, it created this permanent fault line in Western thought, a crack that, honestly, you can still see today. And just like that, it was over. Any hope that the great scholar and the great reformer could ever find common ground again was completely gone. The lines were drawn in the sand. Erasmus picked his side, and Luther made it crystal clear that on this point, there was zero room for compromise. They were bitter intellectual enemies until the day they died. But this was way bigger than just a personal falling out. Their clash perfectly captured one of the deepest theological divides that would define Protestantism for the next 500 years. Is salvation a cooperative project between us and God, or is it totally an act of God's sovereign will? That very question, first battled over by these two, is still being debated in churches all over the world right now. So 5 centuries later, their question is still hanging in the air. It forces us to ask ourselves about our own choices, our own agency, and what we really believe. Is your will truly free, or is it, as Luther so powerfully argued, just blind?